Lakefront Brewery. Pumpkin Imperial Ale, brewed by Lakefront Brewing Company out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 13.4% alcohol. Let's give it a shot. So it is a barrel-aged ale. Being right up front with you, the alcohol content is super high. So really be cautious when you're drinking this beer, especially if you're going to have more than one. Second thing, it's barrel-aged. It says it's barrel-aged in brandy barrels. Now, you do kind of get that barrel kind of taste. Some of these beers, it's a smooth, but it's a really, you get that overpowering alcohol kind of flavor, scent, and kind of burn when you drink these beers. And there's a smoothness about it. I feel like that's another common characteristic of some of these barrel-aged beers or brewed in barrels. But that being said, even though it's a 13.4% alcohol, there is a slight smoothness about this where you kind of, it doesn't feel like it. And I just want to really cautious you, if you drink this beer, it can sneak up on you real quick. I wasn't aware of the alcohol content when I first tried this beer, but then I saw it and I was like, oh, okay, now it kind of makes sense. Now onto the beer. It is a pumpkin beer. I like my pumpkin beers. I'm very strict about criticizing my pumpkin beers, and I'm very picky about my pumpkin beers as well. That being said, this one is a very heavy pumpkin spiced beer. It's not a pumpkin pie beer. You're not going to get the sweetness that you typically get from like a pumpkin pie beer. However, there is a sweetness about it, but I think it's that barrel-aged effect. There is some sweetness, but the spices are so overwhelming that when you take a sip of this beer, you're getting flooded with numerous flavors and spices that you're not exactly sure what you're tasting, but I'm not complaining about that either. Some of these pumpkin spice beers, you take a sip of it and you don't taste maybe one or two spices, and they're kind of weak. This one, on the other hand, is extremely strong, extremely upfront, extremely forthcoming, and I'm going to say overwhelming. There's a lot going on, and the pumpkin is on the back end of those spices. It's there, but I just wish that pumpkin was maybe up front and the spices were in the back, rather than the spices being up front and the pumpkin in the back. It's a very heavy beer, obviously with the alcohol content. It's a dark beer. I don't see many people drinking more than one of these in a sitting. However, it's not bad. I actually kind of really enjoy this beer. My drinkability, again, I got to limit it to one. It's not overly sweet. The spices are overwhelming to the point where you're going to probably get annoyed with it. The ale itself, it's slightly on the bitter side, but it doesn't have a crazy bite to it where you're going to be annoyed by it and immediately think that this is an IPA or some hoppy beer. Clearly, I think that this beer is meant for the fall, autumn months, maybe the winter months too, just by the barrel-aged effect that it has. I could see drinking this in the cold months too, but I prefer leaning my pumpkin beers into that October, kind of November time frame. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give this a 6. It's heavy on the alcohol content. It's not super sweet where I would like it to be. Well, I shouldn't say it's super sweet, but I like my pumpkin beers slightly sweeter. This one is just so forthcoming with the spices, and they're all over the place, and I don't know how many there are, or maybe it's just one or two, but they just really added too much of it. The barrel-aged effect, it's a nice compliment to it, but I feel like they didn't have to do that with this beer. This beer would have been perfectly fine without that barrel-aged effect. It's smooth, it's thick, it's heavy, and the alcohol content is just skyrocketed. 13.4 is probably one of the highest shelf beers that I've had in recent memory. All in all, I probably won't come back to this beer. Being a pumpkin beer, I'm very picky. I have my favorites. But I don't think I wouldn't exactly not recommend this beer to people either. I think it's very memorable, especially with the alcohol content, with that very strong spice flavor that you're getting up front. This is going to be a memorable beer, but I don't know if it's memorable in the way that it wants to be memorable. So again, that's Lakefront Brewing Company, Pumpkin Imperial Ale, 13.4% alcohol.